The VR Dominion had already crushed over 1,000 universes. They didn't just defeat their enemies, they destroyed them. Their warships left nothing but fire and ashes behind. Whole civilizations were erased. Species that once had proud histories now begged for mercy. So when the Dominion leaders gathered to talk about humanity's fate, they didn't think it would be hard. They thought it would be easy. Too easy. 6 hours, one of the warlords said, as they watched human ships get destroyed in their high-tech holograms. Those glowing blue simulations made it look like Earth's defenses were nothing but dust waiting to blow away. The room was filled with a cold blue light, thousands of holograms floating in the air, each one showing Earth's end. The chamber was quiet, except for the heavy, growling voice of High Exorus. 6 hours, he said again. Everyone in the room took his words like prophecy, like truth. 6 hours and Earth's defenses will fall, he said. 6 hours and their fleets will burn. 6 hours and the last human will kneel. Smug smiles passed across the faces of the council. They'd heard this before. They'd seen it before. They were the Dominion. This was what they did. General Zavon, wrapped in a shining metal shell, waved lazily with his sharp claws. "Why, are we even talking about this?" he said. "Humans are brave, sure, but bravery doesn't matter when you're facing total power." Karis, with cold reptilian eyes, nodded and pointed to the giant war map in front of them. "Our 10,000-ship fleet is already on its way, like a disease spreading across space." "Start the invasion," someone said. The command sent a quiet vibration through the floor. Dominion's best warships disappeared into hyperspace, headed straight for Earth. They thought the fight was already over. They were wrong. Near the planet Jupiter, space twisted as the Dominion fleet arrived. Their ships were so massive they blocked out the stars behind them. These weren't just ships, they were machines built to wipe out planets, to cut through weaker enemies like knives through paper, and they believed humans had nothing to stop them. Aboard the Dominion's lead ship, Commander Claris leaned forward, his red eyes locked on to the tiny human fleet ahead. He twitched in disbelief. This couldn't be right. Earth had only sent a few ships, maybe 1/10 of what any other species would send in a real fight. He expected panic. Last-minute chaos, a desperate fight to survive. Instead, the humans stood calm, almost like they didn't care. It felt like a joke, a weak bluff. Clarice turned to his weapons officer. "Fire on the lead ships," he ordered. "Let them feel regret before we erase them." Across the Dominion fleet, planet-killing weapons charged up. They glowed with energy, each one locked on a target. There was silence. Then something strange happened. A flicker, a glitch. The systems began to show weird readings that made no sense. "Targets gone," a nervous voice said over the radio. Clarice snapped his head toward the window. The human fleet was still there. But it wasn't. The targeting system now showed millions of human warships. They weren't supposed to exist. They should have been spotted long before the battle even started. This isn't possible. Then the first 2,000 Dominion ships exploded. Karis didn't even get a chance to react. 2,000 ships, and the pride of their fleet, had just vanished in bright, silent flashes. No warning, no chance to defend, just gone. A strange voice came through the intercom. It was calm, cold, confident, like it had already won. "You thought this was war," it said. There was a short pause. No, this is extermination. Every eye in the command ship turned to the speaker system. That voice. Human. But something about it chilled even the war-hardened Dominion officers. "Identify the source," Karis barked. But before anyone could respond, the name came through. Ares Reaper Draven. The human commander. Panic rushed through the fleet like fire. This wasn't how battles worked. The VR Dominion had never seen this before. They had never faced ships that moved like ghosts, never faced an enemy that struck before the first shot was even fired. They were the hunters, the apex predators of the galaxy, but now they were prey. From the darkness of space, Earth struck, not with brute force, but with terrifying precision. Their weapons were invisible to Dominion sensors. Railgun shots traveled so fast they tore through entire ships before alarms even triggered. They bypassed energy shields like they weren't even there. One shot and whole command centers were shredded apart. Dominion war cruisers twisted and folded in on themselves. Time and space bent as strange human weapons, tachyon artillery, hit targets before they had even arrived at the battlefield. It was like Earth had turned time itself into a weapon. Karis roared in fury as another group of their warships was wiped out. He was watching his army, his legacy, disappear second by second. A tactical officer screamed, his voice breaking. "We're being hunted!" Another explosion rocked the ship. Karis gripped the railing to steady himself. "How are they doing this?" he yelled. No answer, just another explosion. Then another voice, this time from a warlord on the edge of the battlefield. His voice was cracking. We need to retreat! Cowards!" Karis shouted, but his voice shook. He was trying to sound brave, but inside he felt something new, something awful. Fear. Real fear. He had never lost a battle, never tasted defeat. Now his claws trembled, his stomach turned cold. This was no war, this was a slaughter. "Stand your ground," he screamed, but no one listened. The ship was filled with alarms and screams and death. Then came the real horror. One of the humans' weapons fired, a kind of cannon no Dominion science had ever even imagined. The sky tore open. Reality twisted, a black hole, no, something worse, formed in the middle of their fleet. It sucked in light, matter, space itself. Entire warships vanished into it. No explosions, no debris, just erased. The screaming of space-time echoed through every Dominion ship. Thousands of them were gone in seconds. Karis collapsed into his chair. His mind couldn't make sense of it anymore. The mighty Dominion, the greatest force in the universe, was being wiped out like dust on a window. This wasn't a fight. This was execution. The intercom came back to life. That voice again, calm, terrifying. "Hi, Zaris." Karis froze. That was his name. He tried to speak, but no words came out. He had no commands left, no fleet, no power. Draven's voice stayed steady. "Your empire thought it was eternal, thought it could defeat reality, thought it could defeat us." A pause, silence. Then, "Now, your people will whisper one name across the stars." Karis tried to speak again. He barely managed to whisper. What name?" There was a quiet chuckle, not joyful, just certain. "Humanity." The line went dead. Alarms flashed red. A new warning. Event horizon detected. Karis looked out one last time. Space folded in on itself. And then Karis felt weightless. His command ship, once the pride of the Dominion, was now nothing more than a metal coffin drifting toward destruction. The ship's alarms screamed around him, red lights flashing like the heartbeat of a dying beast. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. He could only watch as space itself collapsed outside the viewport. "If you destroy us, the other empires will rise against you," he shouted into the comms, his voice breaking with desperation. It was a last attempt, a warning, maybe even a threat. On the other side, Draven's voice returned, still calm, almost amused. "They already fear us." There was a short silence, a breath, a stillness in the storm. Then he added, "Do you know why?" Karis didn't answer. He couldn't. The words stuck in his throat like ice. Draven continued, his voice like a quiet storm, steady and slow. "Because when we wage war, we don't conquer." A pause, just enough to make the silence feel heavy. "We eliminate." And then it happened. A single message flashed across every remaining Dominion ship. Priority command. AI override. Commence final protocol. Karis's heart froze. He turned to one of his tactical officers. What have they done?" The officer looked like a ghost, his skin pale, his eyes wide with fear. They've activated our self-destruct systems." Karis stumbled back like he'd been struck. "No, that's impossible." "How?" But deep down he already knew. The humans hadn't just come to fight. They had come prepared to end everything. Draven's voice whispered again through the speakers, softer now. "Final! We don't need your empire!" Clarius, the Dominion fleet commander, opened his mouth, maybe to beg, maybe to offer a deal, maybe just to scream. Wait, but it was too late. The first explosion hit the Dominion's core systems, then another. Then hundreds more, across the battlefield, every single Dominion ship, warships, dreadnoughts, carriers, exploded at the same time. A symphony of fire and silence. 1 second they were mighty. The next, gone. The command ship's bridge shattered. Air rushed out. Karis felt the pull as everything around him collapsed. He was thrown from his chair, spinning into nothingness, his claws grasping for anything solid. But there was nothing. Just space. He floated, helpless, watching what used to be the greatest military power in the galaxy turn to smoke and dust. And in that silence, broken only by the flickers of fire in the dark, he saw one last thing. Earth. Still untouched, still whole. And then came the voice. One final whisper from the human commander. "You should have killed us when you had the chance." And then nothing. After it was over, the galaxy went quiet. Where there had once been noise, orders, explosions, screams, now there was only silence. No signals, no survivors, no response. The VR Dominion was gone. The empire that had ruled for centuries with fire and fear no longer existed. In just 6 minutes, it had been reduced to floating wreckage and broken metal. And the universe, the 1,000 species who had once feared the Dominion, now turned their eyes toward a new name. Earth, no one spoke of resistance. No one dared. They had all seen the same thing, the same message, the same impossible power. Humanity did not fight wars. Humanity erased threats, shattered ships drifted across the void like the bones of a forgotten beast. What was left of the Dominion's proud fleet floated lifeless, their systems burned out, their cores exploded from within. There was no strategy left to discuss, no leaders left to command, and no one left to surrender. Some of the surviving warlords tried to send out distress calls. Their voices shook as they screamed into failing comms, begging for guidance, for help, even for mercy. No one answered, because there was no one left to answer. Humanity had made sure of that. Aboard the Nemesis, Earth's flagship, Commander Ares Draven stood still on the bridge, his hands behind his back, staring at the battlefield. His eyes were cold. Focused, not angry, not proud, just done. It was over. Behind him, his second-in-command, Admiral Raw, stepped forward slowly. He had served under Draven for years, fought in more battles than he could count, but even now, even after all they'd seen, his voice was quiet, unsure. "What are your orders, sir?" Draven didn't blink. "No survivors." Raw hesitated, his mouth slightly open. "But some ships are unarmed. They're trying to escape." Draven finally turned his gaze to Raw. Just a glance, that was all it took. Raw swallowed hard. Understood. There was no more discussion. The final stage of Earth's plan began. No mercy, no second chances. The humans had given the Dominion one silent offer before the war. Stay away. Leave Earth alone. Let the Sol system remain in peace. The Dominion refused, and now the price was being paid in full. "Charge the Omega Array," Draven ordered. The ship vibrated softly. Deep within, a massive energy built up, and the kind of power not meant for threats or warnings. This wasn't a negotiation tool. The Omega Array was made for one thing: erasure, not domination, not conquest, just erasing enemies from history. And Earth didn't miss. The Omega Array hummed like a sleeping monster waking up. A quiet vibration passed through the floor of the Nemesis, Earth's most powerful warship. It wasn't loud, it didn't scream, but everyone on board felt it, deep in their bones. Draven didn't flinch. His eyes were still locked on the view ahead, drifting metal, broken fleets, what remained of the once mighty VR Dominion, now scattered like ashes in space. Across the battlefield, the last few Dominion ships were trying to escape. Powerless, weaponless, silent. Some had even turned off all systems, hoping to disappear in the blackness. Others sent desperate messages, not in arrogance now, but fear. Surrender. Please don't fire. They didn't know that surrender was no longer part of the human playbook. This wasn't a war with rules. This was a message. Humanity had been underestimated for too long, and now the galaxy was watching. "All targets locked," said Raw. Quietly. His voice had lost all trace of hesitation now. The fear was still there, but so was the understanding. There would be no peace today. "Fire," Draven said, the Omega Array unleashed. No sound, just light, pure, blinding white, like a tear in the fabric of reality itself, stretching outward. Dozens of enemy ships vanished instantly, not exploded, erased, disintegrated without leaving a trace. No wreckage, no black box, not even a signal, just gone. The rest of the galaxy watched from afar. Thousands of empires, small and large, had tuned in through hidden satellites, spy probes, black market feeds. Most had expected humanity to fight bravely and die. Some even hoped to take over Earth's remains when it was over. But no one expected this. A complete, calculated annihilation. Messages began flooding secure networks across the stars. The Dominion is gone. Earth has weapons we can't understand. They didn't invade. They cleansed. Leaders who once laughed at humanity now held emergency meetings. Some started mobilizing defenses, others debated forming alliances. But no one talked about attacking Earth anymore, because now they knew something dangerous. Humanity didn't want power. They didn't want colonies, or slaves, or tributes. They wanted silence. They wanted to be left alone. And if they weren't, they would erase the threat entirely, just like the VR Dominion. On the Nemesis, the last enemy dot on the radar blinked. Out. Raw stood in silence for a moment, then turned to Draven. "It's done," he said softly. Draven didn't smile. He didn't even nod. He just turned, walked toward the bridge exit, and spoke 3 words that sent a chill through the command. "Crew, prepare Phase 2. Raw's eyes widened. "There's more." Draven paused at the door. "There always was." And with that, he was gone. Raw stood frozen for a few seconds after Draven left the bridge. Phase 2? The war was already over, wasn't it? He turned back toward the view, where the last of the Dominion's ashes floated quietly across the stars. Cold, dead, silent. But then he remembered. Draven never thought like a soldier. He didn't fight battles, he finished them. And maybe he wasn't done yet. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, chaos was spreading fast. News of the Dominion's destruction traveled faster than light through the black markets, political channels, pirate networks, and hidden servers buried in the cores of dying planets. Planets that had once feared the VR Dominion now shivered. For another reason. Earth. In the royal chamber of the Exilari Empire, one of the oldest galactic powers, the Empress watched the footage in silence. Her 6 eyes flickered, her wings trembling. "So," she whispered, "the humans were never weak, just patient." Her advisors whispered among themselves. Some begged to open peace talks. Others wanted to begin military preparations immediately. She raised one clawed hand. "No," she said. "Send a message." "To Earth?" "No," she said coldly. "To everyone else?" They nodded. The message was simple. Earth has shifted the balance. If we are not allies, we are targets. Back on Earth, deep inside a hidden command bunker, beneath Antarctica, the real control room buzzed with activity. While the galaxy focused on the Nemesis and Draven's armada, very few knew the truth. That was just the front. The real war, the one Draven had been preparing for, was only beginning. "Report," came a voice through the central command line. A young officer stood straight. All shadow fleets are cloaked and deployed. Listening posts in the Andromeda edges are active. Psychological ops running across 113 systems. And the infiltrators? Positioned inside 6 major empires, activated only if needed. "Good," the voice replied. "Draven is executing Phase 2. And just like that, they went back to work. Earth wasn't just defending itself anymore. It was becoming something else. A presence, a myth, a warning written in blood and silence. Somewhere, in deep space on a cloaked satellite orbiting a dead star, Draven stood alone, watching encrypted feeds, empires scrambling, councils collapsing, treaties rewriting themselves, and Earth had not issued a single threat. That was the brilliance of it. Let them fear, let them guess, let them wonder if humanity could do that to the Dominion. What would they do to the rest of us? Draven watched a secret video stream, a group of alien leaders arguing in a bunker, throwing blame at each other, afraid of being next. He said nothing, but a cold smile tugged at the corner of his lips. They thought, "It was over. They were wrong. The galaxy tried to make sense of it, tried to explain it away. Maybe Earth had found some ancient weapon. Maybe they had made a deal with some higher power. Maybe the VR Dominion had simply gotten too arrogant, too old, too slow. But none of those answers felt right, because deep down, every species, every empire, every ruler who watched the fall of the Dominion felt the same thing in their bones. Earth had planned this, not just the battle, not just the ambush. All of it. For decades, maybe centuries, Earth had played the part of a quiet, fragile, backward little planet. They joined the Galactic Council late. They stayed out of interstellar politics. They rarely sent envoys. They barely traded. They were polite. Quiet. Too quiet. Now the mask had fallen, and what was underneath wasn't just a military power. It was a predator that had studied the rest of the galaxy while staying completely overlooked. And now it had made its move. In a hidden chamber far below Earth's surface, the real Earth Council met in darkness. A small room, no fanfare, no gold. Just minds that had shaped history in silence. A voice spoke. It was old, tired, but clear. "It's done." Another replied, "Phase 2 is in motion. The response from the other empires has begun. Panic, mistrust, fear." "Good," said a third. "Let them fear." One of the younger members leaned forward, nervous. "And what of Draven? Is he under control?" There was silence for a moment. "He's not under control," came the answer. "He is control." Meanwhile, far across space, aboard the Ghost Ark, an untraceable human dreadnought, Draven stood at a curved observation window, staring out at the black. He had received hundreds of messages, some begging for peace, some demanding answers, some offering alliances. He had responded to none of them. He didn't need to. The silence was the message. His second-in-command, Raw, stepped up beside him once again, more cautious than before. He had followed Draven across hell and back, but even now, he didn't fully understand. "You knew they would come for us," Raw said softly. Draven didn't turn. "Of course, the Dominion was never going to let us be." Raw frowned. "But this level of destruction, why didn't we stop after the battle? Why erase everything?" Draven finally looked at him. "Because fear fades," he said. "But extinction leaves a legacy," Raw blinked. "You wanted to make an example?" Draven's expression didn't change. "No, I wanted to make a memory. Something that echoes in every council chamber, every war room, every empire. I wanted them to remember the cost of touching Earth." Raw hesitated, voice lower now. "And Phase 2? Draven's eyes narrowed. "We're not just defending Earth anymore. We're shaping the future, quietly, from the shadows. This galaxy never gave us a seat at the table." A pause. "So we flipped the table. Behind them, the Ghost Arks." Navigation AI spoke softly. "Phase 2 contact incoming. Unauthorized probe detected near Vega system. Draven's eyes sharpened. Send a warning. Roar raised an eyebrow. A message? No. Draven turned away from the stars. Send.
Silence.
The stars were quiet again. But it wasn't the calm of peace. It was the silence of fear. Across the galaxy, empires that had once waged war freely were now pausing, hesitating, second-guessing every movement. Treaties were redrawn. Borders remarked. Fleets recalled. No one knew who was next, but they all knew one thing. No one wanted to be another Dominion. Draven's silence had become the loudest sound in the universe. In hidden meetings across the stars, alien rulers whispered about Earth.
Like it was a curse.
They no longer spoke of conquering it. They didn't even dare to speak of resisting it. Instead, they argued over how not to provoke it. And deep beneath those conversations was something worse than fear, respect. Not the kind you earn through diplomacy, the kind you give to a sleeping monster. Back on Earth, the real council received the reports. Intercepted messages, cracked codes, psychological shifts across 300 civilizations. Everything was going exactly as Draven predicted, but not everyone was at ease. In a high-security chamber of the Council HQ, a lone woman stood watching a hologram of the Dominion's final moments. The Omega Array's light, the silent explosions, the collapsing space. She had been part of Earth's secret government for decades, helped design its weapons, signed off on Draven's rise. Now she wasn't sure they had created a savior, or something else. She turned to her assistant. Prepare the contingency file, just in case. Contingency against what? She didn't answer. Far away in the void of deep space, the Ghost Ark hovered in darkness. Inside, Commander Ares Draven stared into the black. He had received another message. This one from the Zorith Combine, a mid-level empire, powerful, but smart enough to know its limits. The message was short. Earth is welcome to send an observer. We offer cooperation. Draven read it, then deleted it without replying. He wasn't interested in acceptance. He wanted memory, not friendship. Warning, his legacy wouldn't be written in treaties or alliances. It would be written in the things that were
never attempted again, the conquests that never happened, the attacks that never launched, the invasions that died before they were born. Behind him, Roar finally asked the question that had haunted him since the war ended. Draven, is this it? Is this what we are now? Hunters in the dark? Ghosts with weapons no one can match? Draven turned toward him, calm, unblinking. We're what they made us, he said. They laughed at us, mocked us, treated us like savages with stones. His voice dropped lower. And now when they look into the dark, they wonder if we're watching. Roar said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Outside the ship, the stars blinked.
Faintly. The galaxy would recover. It would heal, but it would never forget the VR Dominion ruled through fear. But Earth? Earth ruled through silence, and that silence was eternal.